Okay, welcome back. And we just finished talking about the college football playoff and how teams are run and how that relates to our government. And let me segue to this. Let's go to professional sports, an actual professionally um, run organization, and more specifically, a player in this organization. Let's talk about LeBron, right? And we always talk about how Jordan is greater than LeBron because he won and he never lost and things like that. Now, when you actually examine who's better, right? When you actually examine who's better at what they do, it's close, but it's not that close. It's LeBron James is clearly the greatest player to ever step on a basketball court in the history of the game. LeBron James averages 27 points per game. Michael Jordan averages 30. LeBron James averages 7 assists a game. Michael Jordan averages 5. Let's say those assists are created equal. That's actually a favor to Michael Jordan because LeBron passes on more three-point attempts than Michael Jordan ever did. But let's say they're created equal. Either way, that's still 4 or 6 more points, right, than Michael Jordan in terms of net offense created as a result of the assists. And when you take that into the equation of, hey, this is how we should judge the total offensive output, LeBron James is actually the slightly better offensive player. Now he's also the more versatile defender, only player that can guard 5 positions at an elite level. Or the first player, I should say. Kawhi Leonard, Kevin Durant, LeBron James is the first guy in the history of basketball to do that. The first guy in the history of basketball to do that. So, when you look at who's the best, right, you have to give it to LeBron. There's no argument about that. Now you can say Jordan had a better jumper. Well, guess what? That's great. That's the reason people like Sam Darnold over Baker Mayfield, because traditionally all the great players have a shot if they're not big men. LeBron doesn't have that great shot and Jordan has a great mid-range game, all-time great mid-range game. So people find it easier to like because it's more prototypical, because it's sexier in a way. But if you can put the ball in the bucket, man, it doesn't matter how you do it, as long as you do it. And that's just how I judge LeBron. And we can go through the finals and everything like that. We can examine the record. LeBron James has lost his team 1 series. Michael Jordan didn't go to the first round of the playoffs his first 4 years in the NBA. Okay? His first few years in the NBA. 4 first round exits. Pardon me. Exits. LeBron has had none. Okay? So, this argument about playoff success, it's a team-based thing. Don't lose sight of that. Never lose sight of that when judging players. Wilt Chamberlain shouldn't be fined because of it. Bill Russell shouldn't be held on a pedestal because he had Hall of Famers coming off the bench. Okay? It's ridiculous how we judge NBA players off of rings. It's ridiculous how we judge NFL players off of rings. That's why I say Aaron Rodgers is the greatest quarterback to ever play in the history of football. Because he's the only guy that can run that fast, throw that far, throw that accurately, throw on the run on a consistent basis, and his team doesn't win because he doesn't have talent around him. That's not his fault. Brady has always a good running game, always a decent supporting cast of wide receivers, always a legitimate defense. That's not the issue. Brady's great, but he's not Aaron Rodgers great. Let's be honest here. You really think Tom Brady's better than Aaron Rodgers? You really think LeBron James is not as great as Michael Jordan? You really think that? Whoever's saying that is a homer. Okay? They don't look at the full picture of what's going on. And I think that that's a fallacy where we're killing legacies in sports and we're propping up ones because of this sort of nostalgia towards winning in team sports where one guy can't do everything, and we're giving the one guy all the credit or all the blame for something he doesn't deserve either of. Okay? So now I relate that to politics, right? Nancy Pelosi. Oh my God. Obamacare repeal is going to kill people. This tax plan is going to, it's a boon to the rich, which it is. I'm not denying that. It's like draconian law. I mean, are you kidding me? She is ridiculous because it's the same Michael Jordan syndrome. Like, we're judging LeBron James off 4 games against the Dallas Mavericks, and that's how we're defining his career? We're defining the Republican Party as a draconian type of regime that makes draconian laws because, oh wait, they favor the rich. Well, every tax plan does. Okay? No, even the Democrats don't not favor the rich. In fact, most of their donors are rich people. Okay? We love to be partisan to get what we want. And that's in sports and that's in politics. When as a matter of fact, a tax cut or a tax increase that is not permanent, that most of them aren't permanent, they can probably be like, once a Democrat comes to office, this corporate tax thing is gone. It's not going to be a major thing. 4 to 8 years of a tax break, okay, isn't going to kill people. Let's be real. 4 games of LeBron James' career does not disqualify him from the greatest of all time conversation. Okay, let's be real here. What we're talking about are small instances, okay, in a picture that is extremely large, that should be looked at extremely large when talking about the future of government, when talking about legacy. Those pictures are large. You can't micro frame those. You shouldn't to make your point. That's ridiculous. Okay? That's a ridiculous argument to make. And I think they should be called out on that. Now, I want to focus more on politics because, notably, I am a conservative and I believe in regulation reform and tax reform and cutting taxes, cutting regulation. I think the government should not restrict small businesses and large businesses on the basis of, hey, the world's gonna die because of pollution. You know, I have my own opinions. I would personally, if you want to appease those people, just kind of incentivize a merger between the big oil companies and the environmental companies, where you can sell oil, aka profits, aka tax dollars to the government, and you have this climate change stuff fueled by these rich oil companies, right? You have this stuff. I think it would work out well. And therefore, you don't need this regulation, which means you have the companies have a lot more money to give to invest in their in job creation and wage growth. Now, I would say that you have to regulate at some point. That you have to give some of that money through to the employees, because otherwise this is a ridiculous cut. I mean, the businesses are hoarding all the money. Nobody actually gets any benefit out of it. But I do think cutting regulation, cutting taxes, not taxing bonus money, or not taxing wage growth, I think that's important for the middle class. I think that's also important for jobs to be created business-wise. That being said, right, I look at the Republicans and I say to myself, you have two parties, okay? The Republican Party is split into two groups, alright? There's the all conservative group that's all principled and stuff, and that won't work because their ideas are from the 1800s. And then you have this Paul Ryan group that doesn't have any principle, and that status quo is the basis for all their governing tactics, because they want votes, they want seats, and because they live in districts where it's not classical conservatism like libertarian wise and steep tax cuts and things like that, that you have a lot of catering, that you have a lot of abandoning of principle because you want votes. And this infighting is going to destroy the Republican Party. It's going to destroy it. I guarantee you that. And I guarantee you that this will happen to the Democrats at the same time as well, because you have those crazy, idiotic socialists, okay, along with the people that are extremely feminist, that don't like actually know that the wage gap doesn't exist, that don't actually know that well, wait, the Republicans are the ones that are the party of protecting women, because they're the ones that are like, hey, own your guns, right? But anyway, that's not the point here. The point here is clashing of, and then there's the Tom Perez, Bill Clinton, Hillary Clinton, Barack Obama wing of the party that's more reasonable. And yeah, I'm not a big fan of any of those people, but come on, they're moderates. They're left-leaning moderates. Nothing major is gonna happen. And I do think that this infighting, right, is something that I look at and I say, these parties, right, have such strong voices. These factions of parties have such strong voices that this is not going to work. Though at some point, instead of having a president that represents 50% of the country, they're going to represent 25%. And you have 3 other people representing the other 75%, and it's not going to go well. Okay, I think it's cyclical, because this happened before in the 1980s, where you had guys like Jimmy Carter, who I already railed on before, and crazy socialist 90% tax rate guys like that. And then you moderate to Bill Clinton, and guess what? And a normal Republican House, and guess what? It worked well. But human beings, because they weren't represented the way they wanted to, because these people are not the biggest hurrah, hurrah, I'm gonna fight for you guys, that you want people that actually, like, that you think are going to help your cause. And then it's very cyclical. You go from radical to moderate to radical to moderate, and a very, very cyclical type of thing. I see this in sports. The Seattle Seahawks are like the moderate to radical side. But the difference here, and the difference that I see in this, the difference here is that I think there's no going back to moderation unless you let go of those guys. See, in American politics, we let go of radicals, of very insane ideas, by picking moderates, by picking representatives of the moderate view, and letting go effectively of the radical, crazy ideas. The Seattle Seahawks have to do the same thing to restore a semblance of culture, a semblance of normalcy in their locker room. You have conservative people in that locker room. You have extremely liberal people in that locker room. You have people that want to get paid, that believe because they're Pro Bowlers, they deserve big time money. Okay? And you can't give big time money out to everyone, and there's a lot of big time defensive players in Seattle. And now because they're getting old and they want money and they have different political opinions, infighting happens. Now, unlike American politics, where the system is such that because there are so many people that impact positions of power, the voting and stuff like that, you will return to normalcy in a fairly decent amount of time. In the Seattle Seahawks case, when you have only a few people and you have a few select people who are so good at what they do, when you have those few people and you can't find guys off the street like that, here's what happens. You can't let go of these guys, but you have to, in order to create some semblance of culture to make sure this thing gets back on track. Either that or they let go of Pete Carroll. If they let go of Pete Carroll, everything goes haywire because no major coach that can actually decipher how to reconcile personalities will actually do something. Will actually go to Seattle because no one wants to deal with that mess. And if you're not going to get rid of Pete Carroll, you have to get rid of players. Seattle is going to suck for a long time, and they're going to waste a moderate, right? A level-headed, generational talent in a quarterback in Russell Wilson doing so because they went all, okay, he represents what we want, we're all crazy instead of what we actually need. So they got these talented players, but they got egotistical, political, talented players. And that's what you're going to get if you want, oh my gosh, this is what I want in my type of culture and my type of team, instead of what actually works for this team to win the most games, to have the most continuity in the locker room. Right? That's the issue here. So yes, I think what's going to happen is, like the cycle of American politics, the Seattle Seahawks are going to have to get rid of the radicals. They're going to have to get rid of the radicals. And by the way, I know this sounds contradictory to the point when I was talking about how the president doesn't represent everybody. Well, yeah, but the senators and the congressmen also have to be normal as well, or have normal views as well to be able to employ a moderate platform, which they are not able to do. They weren't able to do pre-Bill Clinton era, right? That's why you saw what happened with the first George Bush, because everybody was so Republican that everybody was like, hey, Republicans good. Well, everything kind of got messed up. And yes, I am a conservative Republican, but you can't let the party run way out there, because they will when given the power. That's what we saw with Jimmy Carter and George the first Bush, and arguably the second Bush as well. And that's when things go haywire. You need your ideals at a restrained approach in order to make sure things are balanced out and things work well. And you need to get those loud, overbearing voices that don't have particularly good opinions. Not that the Seattle Seahawks don't, but that don't fit the proper business-like culture of the NFL. You need to get rid of those players, and they're going to suck for a long time because of it. Because unlike American politics, you can't find you don't find talented NFL players like you do politicians and senators and legislators everywhere you go. You just don't. So, I don't know what's going to happen in Seattle, but change has to come either in the head coaching ranks or in the player ranks, because this is a weird time in the Seahawks franchise history, and it's also reminiscent of what you see in very, very left wing or very, very right wing governments, even